Morning everybody, how you all doing? So the released footage of the young firearms officer after she'd been punched in the nose, got her nose broken, got quite the reaction on X and Twitter. People having all kinds of different opinions on it, most coming out and saying that it was horrific. And yes, it was horrific. Some of the people I was responding to were saying that my reaction to it was cold. I didn't show any compassion. If it had been a normal member of the public, I would have shown more compassion. I would have understood, because nobody deserves that level of violence being forwarded to them. Even firearms officers, they don't deserve that. But she wasn't a member of the public. As I said, she was a firearms officer. And for a member of your team to fall apart like she did during a crisis situation where you're under attack, because that's what it was, they were under attack, and the male officers showed remarkable restraint, because by rights, and I'm judging this by my standards, they fucked up. They really messed up in that situation. The first time that they didn't comply with your orders or attempted to go for your weapons, they should have just put them down. They should have been shot. And if it had been anybody else, I think that's what would have happened. That situation should never have been allowed to escalate to that level that it did. These people are trained to fight in close quarters. They're trained to be precise in their aiming and their accuracy. So yeah, and then you've got to weigh up the dangers to the public as well in that situation. What happens if these people take my weapon and then turn that weapon on the public around me? That restraint then becomes a liability, because now you've put the public at risk. So back to the young lady. So getting lots of comments, but this particular comment stood out because they were commenting on what the other female police officer saying. The other female police officer was asking if she was okay and was she all right, and then this other person, this commentator on Twitter, posted a comment saying, of course she's not okay, she needs a hug. She needs a hug, she needs to be comforted. And so I responded with, no, she doesn't need to be comforted, she doesn't need to be hugged, she needs to compose herself and do a job. Now some people might think that's cold, but then you look at the whole situation, the gravity of the situation. Imagine that you're a 4-person team under attack. One of your team loses it, so now you're down to 3 members of your team. Now another member of your team goes to comfort the person who's lost it. Now you're down to a 2-person team in a volatile situation where now the odds are not in your favor anymore, because you don't outnumber your opponents. You're equally matched. It's 2 against 2. It's not good, is it? This is why the military is so tough to get into. And not everybody makes it. Not everybody makes it. Because you have to be physically and mentally tough to do the job. And the training reflects that. And it's not just training, it's a test. It's a test to see if you can cope with the stress of the job. And that's why I firmly believe that if you're going to be a firearms officer or a police officer in general, it should be tough for you to get in. The baseline should be straight across the board. If you can do the job, if you can mentally handle the stress of training, the stress of the physical side of things, you get in. If you can't handle it, you don't get in. And that's not discrimination. That's just getting in on merit, on can you do the job? Are you good enough to do the job? If you can't, you don't get in. And that's a pretty important checks and balances to have, because that eliminates anybody like that young lady who would put your life at risk in the team and the general public's life at risk because they can't do the job. And let's look how these people are selected. We all know how they're selected, don't we? Right, so usually you'd put your CV in for the job. They'd look at it, they'd base it, they'd have a look at what you can and you can't do. And then they would judge it on the merit of your actual CV. That's what they do. But nowadays, what happens? It goes through a process of box ticking. So if you're good for the job, that doesn't matter anymore, because or your experience or your capability of the job doesn't matter anymore. It goes through a checkbox system. What gender are you? What's your sexual orientation? What skin colour? What race are you? That sort of thing. And then it doesn't matter if you're good enough to do the job or your experience makes you the best candidate for the job. You get chosen based on how many characteristics you have, which now completely discounts you from the job. Not based on merit, but based on your characteristics. Oh no, we can't have any more white straight males who have firearms experience, who have dealt with situations that we've seen that would most likely come up in the job. Oh no, we're down on our lesbian quota this month, so we've got to be recruiting just lesbians. Or we're down on how many women we've accepted into training, so we can't accept any more straight white males or straight black males. That's how it's done. It's an insane way to select people for training. And I've heard horror stories. Again, this is anecdotal, so you have to take this with a pinch of salt. This is only what I've heard. I haven't been able to substantiate this. But I've known firearms instructors, firearm officer instructors, and they've told me that people they have put down as being failing the course because they're just not up to the job, it going up to the hierarchy and it coming down with them being approved. And I think, you know, after the incident that we saw with the young lady, I think it's very likely that that's true. Because how the hell did she get through selection? Now, how did she get through the training and become a firearms officer when she just fell apart like that? Now, she either got approved because she was a woman, because of diversity, equity and inclusion, and because our police force is extremely woke, or there's something wrong with the selection process itself. It's not tough enough. People just getting approved, like I said, based on box ticking rather than ability to do the job. So, no, my reaction wasn't cold. Wasn't a cold reaction at all. I'm looking at it through the lens of a recruiter, of a trainer. And you'll be looking out for the signs of that. You would put these people through emotional stress to see how they react. To see how they react. You make their training purposely tough, physically, to see if they can handle it. I'm not just talking about women in this either. I'm talking about men as well. Because as it was pointed out, there are quite a few diversity, equity and inclusion hires that are male that also wouldn't meet the grade, that also I wouldn't want in charge of a firearm. Definitely not. I've got good examples of that with my time in my job that I used to do. I had several people come to where I was team leader, and they had all the qualifications to do the job, but being out where we were was a completely different environment to what they were used to. They were very much not used to being fired at, and when push came to shove, all their macho nonsense that they thought it was going to be like went out the window, and they just couldn't do the job. They folded like a piece of paper and they had to go home. So yeah, there are males that can't do the job either. The selection process in the army, vast amounts of people that apply to be infantry don't make it because they don't have the mental fortitude, they don't have the physical strength to do the job. And that's a good thing, because that weeds out the people who are going to put your life at risk. It's a good thing. It's not discrimination. And when you lower standards because diversity, it's not good, is it? It's not good at all. I've got an absolute moron coming down a footpath on a fucking motorbike. Idiot. Absolute fucking moron. Horse has come down here. Fucking idiot. That's the sort of shit we've got to deal with. But yeah, I digress. Wasn't a good situation. And it scares me. It scares me to think there are people out in our police force or armed response units that are mentally unstable, emotionally unstable, can't handle the job. Can you imagine if she had a firearm out and she got that emotionally unstable with a gun? Imagine that. You're in a situation where, let's put hypothetical that her entire team had been taken out of action. She was the only one left, standing between you and some armed assailants, and she's huddled in a corner crying, losing it. Not gonna have much sympathy for then, are you, when she's the one that's supposed to be protecting your family and she's huddled in a corner, unable to do a job? I doubt you'd have much sympathy for her then in that situation. You'd be shouting at her to do a job, to get up and protect your family. Anyway, I've rambled enough. But yeah, you've got to look at it through a different lens. You can't look at it through a lens, oh, she's a poor little girl. I have sympathy for her, but in the situation, not a lot. Not a lot of sympathy for her in the situation. She should have composed herself and got on with the job. She didn't, she fell apart, and she put her team at risk. They're the facts of the situation. They're the facts of the situation. It's up to you whether you decide how you feel about it, but from somebody with my background, and I had somebody like that on my team, no, definitely not. Anyway, this is Vindicator, sign off.